everybody, this is the Vik, and today we're going to talk about Godzilla. We're talking about the original 1954 Godzilla today. And when I was going to do this review, I got very confused because of a simple little fact. My original version of this movie, which actually was a VHS, which I bought, as a collection of bunch of Godzilla movies, this movie was stated to be called Godzilla King of the Monsters. But I just found out like a week ago that Godzilla King of the Monsters is the name of a 1956 Godzilla movie, which is ultimately a movie with a combination of this movie and a bunch of American actors being spliced into the whole thing, and they just call that one Godzilla King of the Monsters and they call it a day and saying this is a different movie, because the original Godzilla from 1954 has a Swedish title which essentially is Godzilla the Monsters from the Sea. Now, aside from this little weird thing, we're gonna talk today about the original kaiju movie. It's called Godzilla. So, in a remote Japanese islands, the fishes are disappearing, and boats that are being called out to, investigate, they also disappear. And some of the locals are thinking that this is the work of some kind of ancient sea creature called Godzilla, or the much cooler Japanese name, Godzilla. And, as you can expect, the actual monster from the sea rises up, and he is, of course, wreaks havoc and stuff like that. How is the Japanese army going to stop him? Can they stop him? And what will it take to, defeat Godzilla? And this is essentially the movie. Very simple story. Let's see how it holds up. Now, I'm going to say this up front so you'll understand where I'm coming from. This could probably be, tucked away somewhere in my, book of unpopular opinions that I have. And one chapter of that would probably start with the Vikstrand doesn't really like the Japanese Godzilla movies. I saw them, I've seen like 6 or 7 of them, I think I've done, and it is always the same problem I have. The really old ones is very hokey, and the monster fight looks very cheap and crappy and looks like a toned up version of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And the slightly younger ones, now we're talking like the 90s, like Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla 2, for instance. The technique has gone up way, and but it has stopped being hokey, and it has also lost a bit of its charm, and then it's just kind of there. So I'm also going to say that I think that I have never really understood the charm about Godzilla. I think the suit looks cool. I think his, iconic roar is fucking awesome. But I have never actually got the actual appeal of Godzilla. With that said, I think this is the best of the Japanese movies I have seen. And much of that is probably due to the fact that Godzilla is completely alone in this movie. He's the only monster. Fun fact, when I watched this movie with my mom, she actually said at one point, he looks so alone, Godzilla. Like she was, feeling a little bit sorry for him. And every time I see him, rampaging through Tokyo, somewhere in the back of my mind, I think he just wants a friend. But that helps this movie not being hokey and not being silly and not being stupid. And it is just Godzilla versus the Japanese army. And this movie is not silly at all. It is not, stupid or stuff like that. They play this very serious. They play this incredibly serious, maybe too serious. You can always debate about how if the tone of this movie is too dark and too depressing. I could understand if you rather would have your Godzilla drop kicking people, or you're having sing numbers with Mothra or stuff like that. But to me, Godzilla is a movie that very much holds up actually. Godzilla is a movie with a fantastic story, especially the one about the scientist Citizen. I think it was called, and you know, he might be, you know, sitting on the one weapon that can destroy Godzilla. But his story arc of I must protect mankind from Godzilla, but I also have to protect mankind from my weapon, because if they start using it, we might, you know, be super fucked, even more fucked than if, you know, we have a Godzilla running around causing havoc. That story is great, and the finish of this movie is absolutely spectacularly great. Unfortunately, the entire finale is really slow and really sluggish. You can actually apply that to the entirety of this movie. It is essentially a slow-moving, very sluggish movie with very little Godzilla on screen time, and there is far in between with the actual action sequences and the destruction sequences, which we all, you know, came to see. Because we need a lot of, you know, more time for slight overacting and a lot of characters we don't really care that much about. I mostly cared about the scientist, and he's not in this for very long. Essentially, Godzilla is a very good story, but it has aged terribly when it comes to the pacing. You know, the actual destruction of Tokyo when Godzilla is, you know, rampaging around is actually kind of holds up. I mean, you can see that it is a model being stomped on by a guy in a suit, but the suit is so impressive and it looks to have such, you know, weight to it. And Godzilla, you know, has this presence about him that it still works. It's remarkable how good this movie actually holds up. With that said, I don't know if I necessarily recommend this movie or not. It is a rather slow-moving 1950s monster movie, better than most monster movies I've seen from this decade, and as I said, better than most other Godzilla movies I've seen, at least the Japanese ones. But it is just not that interesting. The build-up to it is pretty awesome, but ultimately, I'm not as invested as I should be. I don't know, it's one of these, you know, cases. Even though Godzilla doesn't have that much screen time, at least we get to see him when he's roaming around and causing havoc. You know, unlike the Godzilla from 2014, I was angry for 3 fucking weeks after seeing that. It was the most frustrating cinema experience I have ever been to. I'm gonna go on a super rant whenever I get to review that movie. Now, how does this Godzilla rank among the, you know, all the Godzilla want to like it so much because of its historical significance and because of its classic status, but I I personally